Welcome to the ITFreeTraining video on special identities. Special identities are considered to be special groups that work like regular groups. However, the membership is determined by particular circumstances. Understanding how these special identities work allows you to achieve results that are not possible using regular groups. First of all, I will compare groups to special identities. Groups are based on membership. The administrator determines which users are in the group. In contrast, the membership of special identities cannot be changed by the administrator. The membership for special identities is determined by characteristics, such as how the user signed in or the method they are using for accessing the computer. For example, if the user is logged in locally to the computer or accessing it from remote using the network. There are a lot of special identities in Windows. In this video, I will look at 5 of the commonly used special identities. These are Authenticated Users, Anonymous Logon, Everyone, Interactive, and Network. Understanding how these work will allow the administrator to achieve results that are not possible using standard groups. Special identities are the same across all Windows installs. Windows can determine the special identity because of the SID, or Security Identifier. For example, if you have a Word document on a Windows computer with the following SID assigned to it, Windows knows that this SID is the special identity Everyone. If this file is then copied to another computer, the SID will also be copied with the file. The second Windows computer will look up the SID on its local database and see that it is the Everyone special identity. So you can copy files between any Windows computers, and Windows will identify which special identity is associated with it. Later editions of Windows will support more special identities, so if you copy files to an old version of Windows, it is possible it may not know which special identity is in use. In some cases, the special identity may be handled differently by different versions of Windows. However, this is rare. Later in the video, I will show an example of where this occurs. The most commonly used special identity that I will look at is Authenticated Users. This essentially allows a user access if they have been authenticated. The authentication may be local or via a domain controller. This also includes authentication from any domain controller in the forest and trusted domains. Essentially, if the user supplies a username and password, they are an authenticated user. This includes local accounts except for the guest account. This also means that anonymous users will not have access. The next commonly used special identity is Anonymous Logon. This allows a user to access resources without the need for a username and password. This often is used with servers that have data that is publicly available. In the case of a publicly available server, it is impractical to give every user that accesses the server a username and password. You can see why a traditional group would not work in this regard, as it is not possible or practical to create or add every user that wanted to access the server. The anonymous logon works like this. When a connection comes into the computer and no username and password is supplied, this connection is classed as anonymous access. If the server is not configured to allow anonymous access, then the connection will be denied. If anonymous access has been configured, the user is given access to any resource that has the permission set to anonymous. You can see that membership of the special identity was determined by the authentication used on the connection, or in this particular case, no authentication was performed. The next special identity that I will look at is Everyone. This special identity includes everyone, including the guest account, but not anonymous connections. This essentially means any authenticated user from any domain, including trusted domains and guest accounts. If you are using a Windows system pre-Windows 2003, the Everyone special identity also included the anonymous logon. You can see that sometimes different operating systems will treat a special identity a little differently. However, it is rare for Microsoft to make changes like these. So far, the special identities that I have looked at have all worked off the way the user was authenticated. The next one I will look at is Interactive. Interactive is when the user is physically in front of the computer and logged in using any user account that allows them to log in. It does not matter which domain it came from or which rights it has. As long as the account has enough rights to log into the computer, it will be classed as interactive. Interactive also includes remote desktop connections. Since remote desktop gives the user much the same desktop control as if they were in front of the computer, it makes sense to include connections made using remote desktop in the interactive group. The last special identity I will look at is network. Whenever a user makes a connection over the network to access a resource, they are added to this group. For example, when the user accesses the server for file or printing. However, any network connection will cause them to be added to the special identity, like accessing the server to perform remote administration. The only exception to this is if they are accessing the server via remote desktop, since this would be considered to be an interactive connection. I will now change to my Windows 7 computer to look at how to use special identities. In this demonstration, I will create a folder that can only be accessed if the user is logged into the computer, either locally or using remote desktop connection. If the files are attempted to be accessed over a network share, for example, permission to the files will be denied. First of all, I will open Windows Explorer from the Quick Launch bar. In the root directory of the C drive, I will create a folder called Data. To change the permissions of the folder, right-click it and select Properties. From the Properties of the folder, select the tab Security. In the Security tab, notice at the bottom that all the ticks for permissions are in gray. This basically means that these permissions are inherited from the folder above it. Before I can change the permissions for this folder, I need to switch inheritance off for the folder. To do this, press the button at the bottom called Advanced. This dialog will only show the current permissions. In order to change the permissions, press the button at the bottom, Change Permissions. Now I will need to untick the option at the bottom, Include Inheritable Permission from the object's parents. Once unticked, I will need to determine which permissions will be used, since the previously inherited permissions will no longer be inherited and thus will no longer be applied to the folder. In this case, I will select Add, so the previously used inheritance permissions will copy to the folder. If I now exit out of these screens and go back to the Properties, notice now that the ticks are black rather than gray, and thus are not inherited and can be edited. Notice at the top the permission Authenticated Users. This is one of the special identities. This will allow any user that accesses the computer locally or from remote to have access to the files. For this reason, I will remove this permission. The group Users also has access. The Users group will contain domain users and also local users on this computer. With the Authenticated Users removed, users can still get access via the Users group, so this will need to be removed as well. Currently, only administrators and the system will have access to this folder, so I need to add some additional permissions by pressing Add. I am only trying to prevent regular users accessing the files over the network. Administrators in the system can still have access. Special identities exist only on the local computer, and by default, Windows will search for groups and users on the domain, and thus will not find any special identities. To change this, press the button Locations. From Locations, select the local computer, in this case WS1. If I type Interactive, Windows will find the special identity Interactive, and it will be added to the permission list. To ensure that interactive users can change files, make sure Modify is ticked. Now all users that log in locally to the computer will be able to modify files in this folder. These files will not be accessible from the network, for example, via a network share, because the user is not accessing the computer locally. This brings up an important NTFS troubleshooting tip. When setting permissions for groups like users and domain users, check to ensure that they are not getting access from a special identity. Removing the users group, as I have shown, does not stop users from accessing the files because they can still get access through special identities like interactive and authenticated users. That's it for special identities. But before I finish the video, I will do a quick review of the major points. The membership of a special identity is determined by authentication and the connection type. Membership is automatically determined by Windows and thus cannot be modified by an administrator. For the most part, special identities act the same on all editions of Windows. The name and SID will always be the same. However, some older edition of Windows may determine group membership of the special identity in a different way, but this is rare. Only the commonly used special identities were looked at in this video. However, you will find that the newer versions of Windows have more special identities. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video from ITFreeTraining and have found it useful. For more free videos from us, please see our YouTube channel or website. Until next time, thanks for watching.